Welcome, everyone, to the Leadership in Quarters podcast, the interview series where leaders come to share their perspectives on different leadership topics. I'm Josh Selden, and today's guest is Tucker Miller. Tucker Miller is a leadership coach and the founder of Onward Leadership. She has over 35 years of senior leadership and consulting experience. Before becoming a coach, she worked as an attorney and an HR executive. She is also an author of The First Four Words, a fresh approach to starting conversations with ease and confidence to achieve better results. So welcome, Tucker.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here, Josh.
Thank you. Great to have you here. And I'm excited about today's topic because it's something that I think happens whether we realize it or not. And I do want to make sure everybody knows where we're going with this. Leaders tend to have behaviors that quietly erode trust over time. And I think it's super important for us to understand what that is and how we course correct.
I would say it's leaders and everybody else. We all do it.
That's right.
It's human nature to try to play it safe. So how do we work beyond that?
That's right. And I think that's a great lead into the conversation. So knowing that it is something that everybody does, and regardless of how intentional we are, you, me, and everybody else, we probably do it. What are some of those daily habits that slowly erode trust over time that you see people do either in their personal life or in their professional life?
I think the biggest thing is people get caught up in their own story about they're too busy to slow down. They're too uncomfortable to have the conversation. They already know how it's going to turn out, so why even bother? I don't have time for the conflict that's likely to ensue. All the stuff that lives in that lizard part of our brain that sort of guides a lot of our daily interactions and habits without us even knowing about it is one of the places of challenge, but it's also reveals the opportunity. Because when we start asking ourselves, why do I keep walking away from the same conversation? Why do I keep avoiding this person? Why am I so reactive to responding quickly and then regretting my results? That's where we start to achieve more success, where we start moving beyond our lizard brain over to our prefrontal cortex.
So, how can people start triggering on this? Especially, you use the word unconscious. And I think there are times when these things do happen unconsciously. When we're not aware of it, how do we then pause and trigger and go, okay, maybe I did do this thing, and oh my gosh, what impact does it have on the rest of my team?
Oftentimes, we're not going to be the first people that we've discovered ourselves.
Yeah.
It's great when you have that kind of maturity and you just know in the moment that didn't land well and you can intervene on your own. But more often than not, what I hear from my clients are my team isn't listening anymore. My team isn't performing anymore. They always think the problem is somewhere else. It's my leader, this and that, my team, this and that. And I will entertain that for a time while we're building the relationship. But ultimately, when we start to think about that may be true, but what are the things that you can do differently? That's the way to get into that level of awareness and start thinking about essentially, do I like the results that others are creating? And guide that discussion to, do I like the results that perhaps I'm creating or influencing? Because we can only adjust our own behavior. That's it. Everything else is a response to what we do. So if you don't like what you see, the first place to start, and rarely do I see it happen, the first place to start is, what might I do differently to start testing a different result? And I think that approach is important because oftentimes people will shame, blame, and vilify. They will take on all the accountability that they know a good person would take. And then they just get stuck feeling bad about themselves. I can never change. I am what I am, those kinds of things. But if you start thinking of it, this is an opportunity to experiment, try new things and see if I get new results, then we're not getting stuck. We're activating to see if we could get better results by using a few different insights. And sometimes you need the perspective of others. So you could talk to your team. What are they seeing? Invite their feedback. They might be a little bit nervous at first. You're going to have to keep asking more than one time. But the people you share your life with have a really good read on what you might be doing. So maybe you start with people who you know love you, ask for the feedback there.
Yeah. Tucker, that's so wise. And I feel like as I listen to that, there's so much to unpack and so many things that people can learn from just that soundbite. And the first thing I think of is that, like you said, we have a sphere of influence. And in general, we view our team and the people who work for us within that sphere of influence, but the main person in that sphere of influence is us. And so we have full control over everything that we do. And to your point, we so often blame someone else and we see that somebody's not meeting some expectation, somebody's doing something we don't like, and we immediately, because it's easy, go, that person's doing this, that's a that person problem. And we don't stop and say, how are my actions, my words, my communication impacting this and creating that situation in the first place?
Exactly. And when you start to look at that, you start to see oftentimes that my actions are actually compounding the problem that I'm experiencing myself. So I have an example of a client that I've been working with recently, and her big aha as we were talking about all the inadequacies and poor performance of her people is that she would get so frustrated and be nice to them, but then go do the work herself, which compounded the frustration. I'm paying these people, they're not doing the work, and I'm doing it for them. And you could just see it snowball in all the wrong directions. And the big aha was she said, I never realized I start from the place of being pissed off. And it was such a simple moment that took years to get to, a lot of poor performance from her people.
Right.
And as nice as she communicates to them, there's something in the energy that I think people were still picking up. And I
Mhm.
think when she started calming herself down and taking that pause, she didn't start in a pissed off state and having to walk herself down. She was just already in that neutral place. And the neutral zone is really the best place of opportunity culturally, trust wise, relationship wise. All of that is imperative to being successful as a leader, is to find that sort of neutral place where people have trust and safety and they're speaking up and you're working together.
That's such a great example, too, because I think it really shows where energy and communication and how you approach these situations don't make up for poor actions. And so you can have this
Absolutely.
energy and you can talk so nice to people and you can make them feel good. But then when we talk about trust, if I am communicating something to my team saying, this is what I need us all to do, and they're like, okay, perfect, you're bringing us into this. And then right after that, I go do the work myself. That immediately sends the message of, I
Yeah.
don't trust you. And not only do I not trust you, but first I'm going to tell you I trust you and I want you to go do this. And then I'm still going to go do it myself.
And then it doesn't stop there because then you're going to send the email that says everything that you just did.
Yep.
And they're going to read in a tone or more of that energy. So even if you write a neutral email, they're not reading it neutrally because they're already pissed off.
But like you said, it just
It compounds.
compounds.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It does. And the other thing you've mentioned twice now, which I think is so important as we talk about trust and eroding trust, and it's in my mind a chicken or the egg thing because you need to have trust in an organization to create that safe space that people then
Yes.
feel safe and they trust you enough to then bring up concerns, which then can help you solve all of these minor things you're doing every day that are eroding the trust. But you can't erode the trust or else they won't feel safe to go do that. And so it's very important to find that balance and make sure that your team feels safe, or else we will never be able to improve because nobody's going to tell us the truth.
That's exactly right. And for a lot of leaders who've been doing this for a long time, they'll say to me, when I started out, no one ever asked me how safe I felt.
Right.
That wasn't even on the agenda. And I said, it is now. It's in the zeitgeist. It's
Mm.
definitely on people's minds. We're all coming at this from a very turbulent, difficult time. There are generational differences. Those are your reality, whether it was your experience or not. It's the reality that you find yourself in. So, just as you're likely not using a flip phone anymore, it's time to upgrade to meet the current situation that we find ourselves in. And that's where candor
Yeah.
with clients can really help. It's not something I'm going to start out of the gate with. We're going to build up some mutual trust and safety in the conversations. As you start to talk about these things about trust, and we quit looking at only our intention and measure our results by the impact, it starts to reveal the path forward.
And that is pretty much a perfect segue into the next thing I wanted to bring up because it is one of my favorite things to talk about as a leader, and it is your intent versus your impact. And
Yeah.
so often, and as you talk about trust and possibly eroding trust, everybody, okay, I won't say everybody, but leaders out there now say, I did this and this is what I meant, or I did this and I don't understand why they're upset. And they don't stop and look at the impact they're having on everybody. They just look at their intent and they don't always fully understand that their intent doesn't translate. And so, in your
Right.
experience, how do you help people find that there is a discrepancy between their intent and their impact and how they can course correct with that?
The first thing I would say is sometimes the impact isn't going to be what everybody likes. So we can look at Mel Robbins, and she says, just do your thing and be who you are, and people are going to have the reaction. Yes. And as a leader, you don't want to lose the trust and confidence of your team. So when it becomes apparent to you that your impact was different than your intention, that is the time to get out in front of it and say, I want to understand how that came across. I want to know what was the miss for you because that was not my intention. And I understand and appreciate that you're telling me that the impact was different. I think sometimes we get caught up in the defense as opposed to thank you for trusting me enough to tell me that didn't land well. I want to work on getting better. People will confide more in you when they see that you're committed to doing better in the future. So say, I'm sorry, and listen, take the advice, decide for yourself. Is this actionable for me, given my values and what the expectations are? And if it's not actionable, go back into the conversation, say, I've really heard that. I think that was great insight. Thank you for sharing that with me. And here's how this is going to play out. And I know it's not necessarily going to make everyone happy, but let me give you more of the why behind it. And you'll probably get more support and buy in, not only in that moment, but in every moment thereafter.
Right. And I think that's where people get confused a lot is they think support and they think this intent and impact and the safety means I'm just going to do everything that they tell me. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not because sometimes you can't. And that's where that why is so important is I hear you and I am showing you that I'm listening, but we can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. And people are okay with that because they feel heard.
Yeah,
And maybe the next time they come to you, you will be able to act on what they're telling you. But there's not this just big blanket of compliance that whatever people tell me, I'm just going to go do. It's the message that you send, it's that impact that you have that allows people to
exactly.
know I have been heard. And yeah, it sucks it didn't go my way this time, but they heard me and I feel comfortable speaking up the next time.
Exactly. Because every time someone speaks up with you, it may be the test for the real thing that they want to talk with you. And they're just putting this out to see how you handle it. So you may miss the big thing if you shut them down, obviously. But I think understanding that having that conversation and saying the answer isn't as you would like today, but I'm still going to keep thinking about that. That may change in the future. Right now, here are the parameters that we're working under, and this is how we'll do it now. But I'm not going to stop looking for an answer to the bigger issue that you've described.
Right. And that's where over communication is so important because people do know that you're listening. And I do think that one other thing that you mentioned, and you mentioned defensiveness. And I feel like also
Mm.
you see a lot of times with leaders, there's this ego and there's this defensiveness because of the ego that I'm being told this, oh my gosh, how could they? And it then ties back to intent versus impact because anytime I go do something, I say, hey, I'm going to go do this and I'm going to tell this to Tucker. And she wasn't very happy. That's a her issue. That's not a me issue. And then
Yeah,
it's so easy to think there's no possible way I could be at blame with this because look at me, I'm me. And so it must be them. And we have to get over that hurdle to understand
that's
that
right.
it doesn't matter. We're not as important as we think we are sometimes. And we could have the best intentions in the world, but if they don't translate properly, then we will not be effective leaders.
That's exactly right. And your comments remind me of meeting with this executive. He was at the top of the Transamerica Tower in San Francisco. So that's as much as I'll say about him. I'm sitting there and he says, I don't know why people don't come talk to me. I'm such a nice person. I think we get so caught up in the person we want to believe that we are. And I said,
Mm.
you are a nice person, but may I respectfully share with you some of the reasons why people may not come and talk with you? And he was, yeah. I said, do you have any idea how many gatekeepers I had to pass through to make it to this chair where I'm sitting across from you? There
Wow.
was the security downstairs. There was the gatekeeper up at the top of the building. Then there was your secretary who brought me in. Then I had to traipse across this very thick carpet of, I don't know what kind of baby camel fiber it was. And here we are. And you are a very nice person, but you're sitting across from me in this gigantic desk that just the accoutrements around you that make you feel secure and powerful are the very things working against other people feeling at ease in coming and talking with you. And he just had never taken the outside in point of view. And that's the opportunity when you talk about culture and building trust and relationship is pausing long enough to say, what does this sound like to somebody else, despite my intention and the way I see myself?
Yeah, and that also brings up a good point where a lot of times when we talk about how nice of a person I am and how approachable I might be, we look at the individual, we look at ourselves, but we don't look at the environment that we've created.
Yeah,
And so, exactly to your point, this person may have been super nice guy and very approachable. And if somebody made it through all of the pitfalls and all of the traps that existed between the starting point and him, they would see that. But he didn't realize that he has this big environment that detracted from people wanting to come and talk to him in the first
that's
place
right.
because all of these things said, I don't want to be talked to. Don't come and talk to me. The appearance and the impact is that I'm making this difficult for you to come talk to me because I don't want to be talked to.
Yeah. And I'm big and I'm powerful
Right.
and I've worked hard for this. I'm entitled to this. All of that is pushing people away unless you're actively understanding that and putting yourself out there with the people.
Yeah. And that's, I think, again, getting back to where the safety comes in because it's
Yeah.
great that you're an outside perspective. So it may automatically have this safety feeling to give him the feedback. But if other
Yeah.
people don't feel that safety, he's never going to hear it. And then he's just going to sit
Yeah.
there on his own, never being approached, wondering, why doesn't anybody talk to me?
It probably helps too that I'm paid to give them that
Yes.
feedback. So I have a greater sense of confidence there. I would be remiss if I didn't respond to that. That's one of the things that is key in a coaching relationship, of course.
Right. Getting back to the nice guy or the nice person mentality, as we talk about trust and eroding trust, a lot of times you see the people who strive to be the nice leader or the nice boss. And I don't want to go and make this person upset. And I don't want to give them bad news or negative feedback. And you see them sidestep all of these important conversations because they get uncomfortable when they can't just always be
Yeah.
the nice person. How does that then slowly erode the trust? And what can this person do about that while still retaining the approachable, nicer leader mentality?
I think more than people on a team wanting someone that they work for who's nice and likable, they want
Mhm.
someone that they really respect. And so you differentiate I can be a nice person, but what are the things that I need to do to be respectful? I need to be honest, forthright. I need to talk about performance, what I expect. I need to not hide the ball. All those things around how I help people be successful in their roles
Mhm.
are critical. And so if we want to be the nice guy and we're charming and we lose the substance, there's no respect there. So being just the nice guy, for me, is a significant red flag when I come in and work with someone. If you're just nice, I start looking under the hood really fast because that probably suggests that you're overplaying one note and we want to build the full chord of all of the interactions that are necessary to be respected as a leader, because people will follow the people they trust and respect. They may not follow the person who's just a nice guy or gal.
Yeah. And that is so important. I'd say it's such an important mindset shift for people to make because a lot of times, in general, I'd say psychologically, people just want to be liked. People like to be liked. And a lot of times they will do things to come across as that nice person because it makes people like them. But to your point, that doesn't always translate to respect and trust. And at the end of the day, yeah, you don't want somebody who's just generally a bad person and makes you feel bad all the
Right.
time, but you need to find that middle ground, that equilibrium of I
That's right.
will do what we need to do for our team, for the success of our team, for the success of you as a person on our team and the business in a way that makes you trust and respect me. And I'm going to do it in the nicest way possible. So also, I don't make you feel bad in our interactions, but we will
Yeah.
do what we have to do to, like you said, build that overall mentality and not just
Yeah.
clinging on to this nice person one.
And I think one of the things that your comments revealed to me is we think, if I'm not just the nice guy, then am I the bad guy? We go very quickly to that dichotomy, and I can be a respected leader and be nice.
Right.
But if I'm only leading with the need to be liked, then I'm leaving so much else out there that makes people feel very uncomfortable and uncertain. But if you can communicate, I may have high expectations, but it's really intended to help you develop and be successful. If you can show the ways that you really are committed to people individually,
Mhm.
who doesn't want that? That's nice. Plus, plus, it's got
Right.
so much more substance to it, which is critical. So you start to think about, or what I'll ask clients, why is it so important that you be seen as a nice person? And invariably, it reveals a confidence issue. There's an esteem, a confidence, maybe a past life experience that is now hindering them as a leader as they move forward. And confidence is not something that just happens, it's a strategic byproduct of being repeatedly uncomfortable in ways that help you grow and help other people grow. So if you think about that conversation that I'm avoiding because I want to be the nice guy is also the thing that keeps you stuck in never being respected, never growing, never advancing. So if you look at each of those opportunities to expand who you are and to grow in your confidence in supporting people, becomes a lot more interesting exercise, and we get out of the lizard brain, and now we start thinking creatively about how can I use this situation that I'm confronted with as a benefit where I increase my substantive knowledge, my experience, and my confidence.
That's right. And I think in addition to that, in my experience, what I've actually seen during my career is in addition to the confidence side, I see a lot of times leaders make assumptions of what the team needs instead of
Yeah.
truly asking the question. And the example I immediately think of as you were talking about that is there was a time that I was in an organization where we had a leader that just was not a very nice person and they made people feel bad in every interaction. Every piece of feedback was a very negative piece of feedback, and they never walked away feeling like you were trying to better them with your feedback. They felt like they
Yeah.
were being torn down. And so as this new leader came in, they saw that. And instead of stopping and asking the team, what do you need to be successful? What do you need for our interactions to be effective and not feel bad every time we talk? They immediately thought, that person was not nice. I'm going to come in and be nice. I'm going to be the opposite of this person I'm seeing. And it still doesn't get the job done because it
Yeah.
doesn't do everything else you just talked about. It just makes this person a nice guy when that isn't really what the team needed.
We want a nice guy in our neighborhood, but we
Right.
don't need them being the person that we report to. So this thing around buy-in is so critical, and it's critical very particular to the current state of the workplace and probably the world, that we have people with lots of things that they want to be heard on, as we've mentioned.
Mm.
And I was working with another organization, and there was some discussion about setting the goal. And the second in command person said, we've got the goal, let's just tell them what the goal is. And I was the first person in command. And I said, we're not going to do it that way because nobody here is happy with how the goal setting has been in the past. So we're going to break people into groups and have them figure out that. And culturally, I think that's important to recognize someone from an entirely different background, environment. This was a person who grew up in a communist Eastern Bloc country. And then here we are in the US and we're thinking broadly and collaboratively. And I could see it. The comment was, that's a waste of time when we know what
Wow.
the goal is going to be. And the goal ended up being exactly what we had set, but the buy-in
Right.
level was totally different by creating the space for people to argue and debate and get to that same result. And I said, to me, that is not a waste of time
No.
because now we've got everybody on our team working for the goal. So, it's really beyond what's nice, what's not nice. It's how do we all collectively move forward together?
That makes a lot of sense. And I know we've touched on a couple of these already, and I think the buy-in is a great example of how we gain some trust back. But when you have a leader who is finally, for whatever reason, whether somebody told them or they have this epiphany that they have started losing the trust of their team, what are like the one to two top ways that leader can kind of change gears and start gaining the trust back?
One thing is to really take some time to reflect on what is it they don't like, what's not working. And I use the compare and contrast model a lot when I can start to write down all the things that I'm not happy with and that aren't working. That's on column one. Then you go over to column two, you start to see here's the better result that we could achieve. And as you start to look at that, I do encourage that people think about I'm the only person right now that I can change and influence this. So, what are some key action steps? And if the list is long, just pick two or three. Don't try to take it all
Right.
on. But it's really being more intentional and reflective. And then, most important, stop avoiding the conversations that you're not having with people individually or as a team. And one leader I'm working with right now, she wants to be more innovative and grow her business, and she needs things to change. And I said, have you thought about starting with talking about here are the things that you're committing to changing in yourself as a part of the strategy, that you're very clear that you need to make some changes? I think that will increase the safety very significantly, and you can probably get more ideas. So, those ideas only come as a result of that pause and reflection that happened first.
Right. And it's okay to show that vulnerability to the team. And for whatever reason, leaders think vulnerability is such a bad thing. But doing that creates that trust and that safety to say, I have things I know I need to work on to get us to the next level.
Yeah,
I'm going to reflect. Why don't you reflect too? And then we can see what we all need to work
exactly.
on together.
That's leading by example. When people get stuck about the vulnerability, they think it's weakness. But if you can really shift your thinking to say, I want to lead by the example that I'm asking other people to commit to with me.
Yes, exactly. And it's so critically important for them to do that and just understand showing your human side is not a
Mhm.
weakness, which it's viewed today incorrectly, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably your greatest strength, and you're underutilizing it while overutilizing niceness.
For sure. And you're just trying
You
to
know?
hide it and stick it away as much as you can.
Yeah, yeah.
So before we wrap up, Tucker, is there anything else that you'd like to share? Any final words that you want to share with everybody?
I'll keep this very brief, but you made a comment that was intriguing about it's important to over communicate. And I work with a lot of leaders who are stepping away and avoiding conversations. So the place to over communicate is in the conversation once it's started. But when you start over communicating to get the conversation started, it usually doesn't work. And that's the reason why, in looking at this repeated challenge that I saw my leaders and clients experiencing, I thought, what's the shortest way to start a meaningful conversation? And that led to the book that I wrote, The First Four Words. You can start a conversation very effectively in as few as four words when you're strategic. And when you go in there, creating the space for people to respond. So the over communication comes a little bit later, but if you're stuck in all the dialogue around how I'm going to get this thing started, it probably fails before you've even entered the room. So
That
if you
make
want to learn more, it's in the book.
Perfect. That makes a ton of sense. Keep it simple at first to get it started, and then you can
Exactly.
move on from there. Thank you so much for that, everybody. Again, it was Tucker Miller, and I'll have all of her information in the description or the YouTube page. Also, in the posting that we have, I'll have the information for her book, The First Four Words. Again, as you just heard, extremely important to really internalize and understand that so we don't create an over communication vortex that kind of throws us off outside of
Yeah.
where we need to be. But I will have all of her information there. If you want to get a hold of her, it'd be great. And if you have any issues getting a hold of her, just get a hold of me and I will make sure everybody gets in touch with each other because I'm sure you want to learn more about everything we just heard today. You can like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast, which is on all of the podcast platforms, all the audio platforms, as well as YouTube. It's my Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Lead in Quarters. And you can email me with any questions or ideas that you have for future episodes, or if you're interested in being a guest in a future episode, at leadinquarters@gmail.com. But Tucker, again, I really appreciate everything you brought here. As we said in the beginning, this is something that all of us do. You and I had this big conversation about why this is important, and I'm sure we accidentally, unconsciously do these things as well. And so the message to everybody is it happens. It's probably happening whether you know it or not. Listen to everything that was just talked through today to help gain that trust back. But this is such a critically important topic because it does happen everywhere to everyone. And I just truly appreciate you bringing everything you did today to help people really understand that more.
Thank you so much, Josh. I appreciate that.